let's talk about artist management. And really, this is the personnel involved, management and personnel of the artist. Now, most artists at the beginning of their career are their own manager. I get it. If it's a band, usually somebody is in charge. Not always. And sometimes bands designate certain people to be in charge of certain things. So maybe the drummer's really good at financing, and the bass player's really good at making phone calls and getting gigs, and uh, maybe the singer is really good at publicity and promotion. I mean, I don't know, but somebody should be in charge of it. So this is section 4 of your artist development plan, which is management, and it's another important part of the artist. So management um, it's just it looks at the overall big picture. Now, the talent manager is also known as the manager of the artist many times. It guides the career of professional artists in the industry. And I would assume that some of you may end up becoming a manager, if not for your own artist. But I know a lot of people in this industry who started off as an artist and maybe was in a band at one point, and they learned all about the business, and then they got into management. So that might be you. This kind of happened to me, and I can't say it's good, bad, or ugly, but I got into the business because of my songwriting. As I got more and more into the business, I started doing more music business, and that business took me away from songwriting. It's an opportunity cost. While I'm doing one thing, I can't do the other. So although I'm still writing, I do have a lot of contacts in the business because I've kind of put my efforts into that. Not on purpose, it just turned out that way. The responsibility that a talent manager has oversees the day-to-day business affairs of an artist. They advise and counsel talent concerning professional matters, long-term plans, and personal decisions which may affect the artist's career. The roles and responsibilities of a talent manager vary slightly from industry to industry, as do the commissions to which the manager is entitled. For example, a music manager's duties differ from those managers who advise actors, writers, or directors. Manager can help artists find gigs and agents and help them decide when to leave their current agent and maybe help them identify who to select as a new agent. Now, many managers act as an agent at the beginning stages, which is okay, maybe. I like the idea of a manager overseeing all the other roles and responsibilities and personnel that are helping the artist. If the manager is doing agent work, that means the manager is not doing and overseeing the other work because they're busy being the agent. Now, in New York and California, it's illegal to be a manager and an agent for the same artist.
What's the definition of an agent?
An agent is someone who finds a gig for the artist.
Okay.
So someone that calls a club and says, hey, I've got this artist I'm working with. Would you like to hire them for a performance?
Okay.
That's an agent, talent agent. So they're looking for gigs for the artist. That's their only job. So they'll send out publicity and promotion to the clubs or to the talent buyers or promoters and try and get them to hire the artist for a gig. And that could be a festival, it could be a nightclub, it could be a wedding, it could be a party, it could be a tour, whatever a gig would entail. That's what the agent does. Okay, so talent agents have the authority to make decisions for their clients, while managers can only informally establish connections with producers and studios, but don't have the ability to negotiate contracts. Agents That's their job. They negotiate the contracts with the artist. So the artist will call the agent, or the artist manager will call the agent, most likely, and say, okay, the artist is looking for gigs on this date, this date, this date, or this tour, or this series of dates. Handle it. And so then the agent will try and make bookings for that and negotiate a good fee, because theirs is on a commission, and they're going to want a good fee for the artist. And so therefore they're going to be negotiating for the artist and then bring those offers back to the manager, so the manager can consult with the artist to see if it's something they want to accept. Okay, keep that in mind. A music manager or band manager handles many career issues for bands and singers, and on occasion even DJs. A music manager helps to determine decisions related to career moves, bookings, promotion, business deals, recording contracts, etc. That's what they do. And they also help with press agents, promoters, booking agents, those kind of things. A business manager, and these are typically CPAs or certified public accountants, they usually do the bookkeeping. And then there's also tour managers. So there's all kinds of different managers that an artist might have to deal with. Hopefully, if the artist is doing this right, they're only going to need to deal with their personal manager, their talent manager, who will then do the correspondence with these other individuals helping out the artist. So the responsibilities are divided many who manage various aspects of a music career. With an unsigned act, music managers have to assume multiple roles many times. Sometimes they're the booking agent, or the graphic designer, or the publicist, or the promoter, or the accountant. So some managers take on all these hats that they have to wear because the artist doesn't have the income to pay these other people to do those jobs. Now, if you're the manager of the artist and you're the artist, you're going to be putting on all these hats. You're going to be the booking agent. You'll be the designer. You'll be the promoter, publicist. You'll think about all these things that you're going to have to do. And that's why I mentioned in the last class about how many hats we wear.
You said there's laws. Said there's laws of that you can't be an agent and a manager.
Yes. In New York and California, it's against the law to be an agent and a manager. It's a conflict of interest many times. So I'll give you an example. Let's say the artist gets a gig for $100, just to make it simple. A manager's fee is anywhere from 10% to 50%, but typically a manager is around 20%. An agent's fee is typically 10%, but I've seen it higher than that. So if the manager gets a gig for the artist, does the manager take his 20% and an additional 10%? What's the deal? How come a manager can now make 30% instead of his 20%? That's because he took off the manager hat and put on the agent hat. And you, the artist, or the artist may say to the manager, hey, listen, we like you being our manager, but if you're going to do agent work, we don't want to pay you an additional 10%.
Right.
So that's why it's a conflict of interest.
Okay. So he would just be paid less, or he wouldn't. He just wouldn't get the 10%.
If you negotiate that, if the artist does not negotiate that, some managers are going to say, hey, I get 20% as a manager, and because I was also your booking agent, I get 10%. So I want 30%.
Would that be allowed, though?
Yeah, that's allowed. In New York and California, it's not allowed, but it is in many other states. In Ohio, it could be allowed. It depends on your agreement with the manager.
What if
Now,
they're like based in like Ohio?
in Ohio, there's no laws on it.
Okay.
However, think about it this way. Let's say the artist gets a gig, the artist has a manager, and the artist has an agent. So the artist gets a gig for $100. They pay the manager 20%, which is $20, and they pay the agent 10%, which is $10. It's still 30%. So in some ways, it doesn't really matter. You're still paying the same amount of money percentage-wise. So it's just something to think about when you're dealing with a manager, other than the artist being their own manager. How is that going to be paid out? Okay. So the artist can help the singers, the songwriters, the bands, instrumentals, and help molding a career, finding music producers, developing relationships with record companies, publishers, agents, and certainly the music-loving public. That's part of their gig. The duties of the manager is about developing a reputation for the musicians and building a fan base, which may include mastering and launching a demo CD if they're dealing with a producer, developing and releasing press kits, planning promotional activities, booking shows. I mean, look at the picture here with the guy with all these hats on. It's like, what is the manager doing? And if you're your own manager, you're going to be wearing all these hats. If you, the artist, is your own manager, let's put it that way. They're also in charge of helping the artist with their image, getting the right studio, the right photographer, the right promotions to make it work. And they help with the CDs and the labels, promotional materials to represent the band. They put together the press kits so that the artist can be known in various circles. And then potentially launching a CD release party. And they're still called CD release parties, but because a lot of artists are releasing digital only, it doesn't always come out to be a CD release party. And many of them are realizing that it's a music, new recording release party or a music release party where you're releasing new material and you throw a party. This is where you invite all the DJs and all the music industry people to come to the gig to see the artist. I try to go to as many CD release parties as possible. I'm always doing my networking there. I meet up with people I haven't seen in a while, and I get to hear new music. So I pay attention particularly to these type of parties because it's new stuff and people from the industry show up at these parties. They don't always show up at a regular gig of the artist. And yes, there are some that do. And I'm one of them because I'm out all the time. But many music professionals don't. They'll wait for the CD release party, go see the artist because it's supposed to be one of those special shows. So these are things that have to be thought about when planning the release of music. But early on in an artist's career, the different facets of management and marketing fall upon either the band itself or, if they have one, a manager. But somebody has to coordinate this. And because the band is relatively new, initially promotion, booking, and touring are minimal because they are unknown. A new music manager begins by establishing a clear understanding of what the artist wants. This can be accomplished either a written or verbal contract. So these are things that need to be thought about also if you're going to be bringing on a manager, other than the artist being the manager themselves. But if they're going to bring on a third-party manager, who is this manager? And is there an agreement that needs to be signed? I would think yes, a management agreement. And think about it. If the artist is just starting off, what kind of manager are they going to end up with? Maybe a brand new manager who doesn't have the contacts. Maybe it's a friend who likes you and says, oh, hey, I'll help you out and I'll be your manager. But they don't know what they're doing in the business. And if that's the case, it's okay, I guess. but I think that a new music manager, one that has no experience, should realize that if the artist achieves a certain level in this industry, that they're willing to give up the reins and turn it over to a professional manager who's been doing this for a long time. It's my contention that an artist should be their own manager until they can afford a quality music manager to be on their team. So when you talk about a quality music manager, is this someone that will work for $1,000? No. If the artist is making enough money, let's say 100 grand, that quality music manager now has the opportunity to make 20 grand. Oh, now you've got their attention. But if you're trying to get a music manager to come on your team and you're going to give them 20% and you're making $1,000 for a gig, that means they're making 200 bucks. Okay? So these are things to think about. And the nice thing about being your own manager is that when an artist gets to the point of managing their career, they then collaborate with a quality music manager. Both of them can sit down and they both know what they're talking about because it's an even playing field. The artist knows every little aspect about their business. And so when they team up with a manager, they can talk about every little aspect of their business. It's much easier to move ahead if that's the case. Okay, so and usually a music management, I know that I've done some management in the past, and the first thing I do is I look at the artist development plan of the artist. And if it's not done, that's the very first thing we work on. The same thing you're working on in this class is to come up with an artist development plan. I go over each one of those 15 steps before I start thinking about gigs or recordings or merch or licensing or any of those things. No, I want to make sure the artist development stuff is done. I don't have to look backwards when I'm going forwards. Just make sure that the artist is going to develop and move ahead into their career in a real, beneficial way. So the music manager is going to help the artist complete their artist development and then move right into product development, which is projects at that point. Okay. So typically a good music manager is an expert at project management. The music industry is all about projects. We've talked about this in the past. And utilizing project management techniques is essential to an artist's success. Now, we do have a project management day coming up in the next couple weeks. So we will be talking about project management ideas. But a good music manager knows how to manage these projects and how it's going to work. Now, let's talk about a manager's compensation. Striking a tentative compensation agreement that can be renegotiated after 3 or 4 months is recommended. And the rate of pay is generally based on commissions of 20% of the net or 10% of the gross or more, depending on performances and commercial monies as stated in the contracts. So, for example, 20% of the net. So let's say a promoter calls the artist up and says, we'd like to have you play at a festival. We'd like you to show up on Friday and you need to bring your own sound and lights. We'll have a stage and power ready for you. Well, many artists don't own their own sound and lights. That means they got to go hire sound and lights. Now, let's just say that the festival promoter says, okay, for you to do this, we'll pay you $1,000. Okay, so that means the manager is going to make 20% of $1,000, which is $200. But what if the artist has to hire sound and lights to come and be there as a part of their gig? And those sound and lights cost $400. Should the manager make 20% of $1,000? Or should the manager make 20% of 600, which would be 1,000 minus 400. What's fair? So these are things to think about. If the manager says, you got a gig for $1,000, I want my 20%. You say, well, we had expenses of $400 just for sound and lights. And the manager's like, well, that's not my problem. You guys get paid $1,000. So maybe what you tell them is, we'll give you 20% of the net, which means 20% of $600, or we'll give you 10% of the gross, which is 10% of $1,000. So it depends on what's going to come out in the contract, but these are things to think about when you're doing your management negotiations. Okay, so the amount obviously depends on the, music and the artist development, the band and the experience, the networks, the resources of the manager. The less developed the artist is, the more experienced the manager, then the higher the commission. If the artist is just starting off and has no power, the manager is a big-time manager, he may charge 50%. I mean, look at Colonel Tom and Elvis Presley. That was a 50-50 deal. Colonel Tom made 50% of everything Elvis Presley made. So it was 50-50. Colonel Tom made the exact same amount of money that Elvis did on merchandise, gigs, recordings, etc. Okay, so gigs. Yeah, it's important for a band to have experience before performing in front of crowds. Well, how do you get experience if you're not there in the first place? Difficult, right? So this is where beginning artists do a lot of free shows. They do birthday parties, they do talent shows, they do open mics. They do things that is going to help them grow with their fans, but they're not going to be trying to do their first gig at the Q. No experience. They don't know the logistics. They don't know stagecraft. They don't know about all the details of entertaining a crowd. So that's why beginning artists do these free shows many times in order to gain experience in putting together their gig. So if an artist wants to, perform at a nightclub, and the manager will expect several conditions. The following is a list of some questions frequently asked by bar owners, managers, or talent buyers. So if the agent calls the club or the talent buyer may say, okay, so what genre of music does the artist perform? How many people are expected to attend if we book this artist? Is a door cover charge required? Will the artist sell their own demos or own CDs? These are questions that will need to be asked. Okay? And a lot of times they're going to they'll request a CD, or they'll request a link to the artist's website so they can go check them out. And I can tell you this from experience. When I was a talent buyer, and I did this for many years, I didn't want to hear a CD of recorded music. I wanted to hear a recording of a live show so that I could understand and hear the artist live. Too many things can be fixed in the studio. You can't fix live recordings too easily. So when I would get CDs in the mail, it was nice, but I didn't use that as the judgment on whether or not I was going to hire that artist. So think about the type of recording that's being done for gigs and how that's going to come across. Okay. Photography. All right. So managers usually secure the services of professional photographers while the artist is recording. And different 8x10 pictures of the artist can be used for websites, CD labels, jackets, posters, press kit, etc., etc. And 8x10s aren't necessary anymore, but certainly they were back in the day. And certainly a lot of people still use 8x10s. But getting a professional photographer. And I think about some of these artists who are successful, and it's amazing to me how many photographs they have of themselves when they were teaming up with a manager. They have photographs of a recording session, of a gig, of loading in and loading out, of just hanging out. And it's amazing to me how many artists have a good quality photographer as a part of their team. And some of them are expensive. So you have to think about that. It's important for the manager to obtain an agreement up front confirming ownership of the copyrights of the photo shots. We talked about CD release parties. Well, this is part of that. Once the production date is established, the manager can begin searching for venues. CD parties are much more attractive to bar owners because they nearly guarantee an audience. Okay, so now you can go to your artist developing person and say, okay, we've got an album release party coming up. And this is what we're putting together. And usually those music release parties are very well attended. And I can't think of many of them that have not been sold out. The press kit. We're going to get more into press kits as we go on, also known as a promo kit. This is a kit put together of what the artist is all about. Maybe music's in there, and a photograph, and a biography, and newspaper clippings, and those kind of things all go into one kit. It's known as a press kit. It's also known as a media kit. It's also known as a promo kit. But we will be putting this together, and I will be offering extra credit for promo kits, and I'll talk more about that when we get into it. Okay. All right. The touring, same idea. Building the team, making sure you have the right team. Who's your tour manager? Who's your bus driver? Who's in the band? Who's your publicist? These kind of things all have to come down. So when you talk about your team, you might need an agent, and you might need more than one, depending on your agreement. You might need investors. You might need concert promoters to be a part of your team, or talent buyers, or tour managers. These are people that help the artist, but certainly they're going to want their piece of the action as they go through this. And then there's the promotion team. Who's your graphic designer, or your writer of news releases, or your radio copywriters, or your promotion team for the internet, or your street team. Maybe you have a telephone promotion team. And then you've got production people on your team, your engineers, your managers, your riggers, your loaders, your operators, stage hands, etc. that might be a part of the team. And then there's always a support crew, your bookkeeper, your MC, your merchandisers, those kind of people are all part of your team. Okay? So when we talk about your personnel overview, what I need you to do in this part of your plan is go down each one of these subsections in there and talk about the plan. Now, you might not have a plan yet, but I want you to think about this. Maybe the artist doesn't have an agent, but what's the plan for an agent? Maybe the plan is once the artist starts to receive 2 or 3 bookings a week, we need to turn this over to an agent. Okay, that's a plan. Or we're going to be looking for an agent real soon in order to help us with a tour. Great, that's a plan. What's the plan for musicians? Are they side musicians, or are they part of the company? Or are they just session players? What's the plan? What's the plan for producers or publicists or publishers? What's your plan for singers, maybe background singers or lead vocalists or those kind of things? Do you have a plan for your personnel? So read over all those things that I have in the book and some of the handouts that will help you with this.